Did mega prisons and Bitcoin destroy El Salvador? El Salvador has these massive mega prisons where prisoners are stripped of their basic legal rights. In addition, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender in September of 2021. At the time, the price of Bitcoin was about $46,000, and today it's about $27,000. Obviously, this isn't good. So is President Nayib Bukele running El Salvador into the ground, or is he setting up El Salvador to become a global superpower in the years ahead? Let's start with these mega prisons, which are the largest in Latin America, where gang members are put in extreme conditions, arrests can be made without a warrant, and detainees no longer have the right to a lawyer. And of course, many people have a problem with this, including human rights activists. But why is El Salvador being so harsh? They're doing this in an effort to eliminate gang violence and murders. For several years, El Salvador was ran not by the government, but by gangs. And these aren't just any gangs. These are some of the most notorious gangs in the world. 18th Street Gang and MS-13. And if you do a Google search for the most dangerous gang in the world, on nearly every single list that won, you will see MS-13. And I don't want to share their crimes on camera, but I will leave this Twitter thread below that goes through some of their atrocities and the crimes they have committed against everyday citizens in El Salvador. So the main goal of these mega prisons is to reduce gang violence and reduce murder. So did it work?
Is this a good idea, or is this a bad idea with what El Salvador is doing? 64,000 people arrested. Crime is down 57%.
Drastic times calls for drastic measures. If the and the stats don't lie, 50% murder rate down. I'm sorry, bro. If you look like that and you're doing some gangster shit, bye-bye. I have no remorse. Zero.
Yeah,
bye.
What is even the pushback here?
So yes, it worked. El Salvador murders plummet by over half in 2022 amid gang crackdown. And I've been reading through many comment sections and threads of people living in El Salvador sharing how their lives have changed with these mega prisons for the better. But I'm curious to know if there's anyone watching this video from El Salvador or has family in El Salvador that could share how life was before these mega prisons and how life is today. And as controversial as these mega prisons are, it gets even more controversial because El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, a cryptocurrency that is very volatile. You might be asking, why would a country or a president make these changes? Because drastic times call for very drastic measures. El Salvador cannot become a first world country if the country is infested with crime and gang violence, and they are not in a good financial situation. And I want you to listen to this dramatic clip from President Nayib Bukele.
Sabemos que somos pequeños, sabemos nuestras limitantes, pero nosotros queremos ser en pequeño como ustedes. Pero para poder ser como ustedes, nosotros tenemos que comportarnos como ustedes y hacer lo que ustedes hacen, no hacer lo que ustedes dicen. Porque entonces nunca vamos a ser como ustedes, sino solo una colonia o un país subdesarrollado. Porque nosotros queremos ser amigos de España, como lo somos, no colonia de España. Porque si nunca nos vamos a desarrollar. Es que el documento que nosotros firmamos, que lo estamos celebrando los 200 años, en 1821, espero que no era un papel muerto. A nosotros nos dieron una independencia. Vaya, aquí está. Usted ahora en adelante va a ser país. No colonia, no protectorado. No. Aquí va a ser país. Entonces yo me la creí, pues. Cuando yo les dije que nosotros queríamos ser como ustedes, y de verdad lo digo, no lo digo se lo digo en serio. Es porque ustedes construyeron sus países. Pero ustedes deben dejar que nosotros construyamos el nuestro. Entonces, si ustedes nos siguen sujetando a las cosas que nos han mantenido en el subdesarrollo, nunca nos vamos a desarrollar. Porque tenemos que cambiar.
He knows that in order for El Salvador to improve, the country needs to take a risk. They need to do things differently. And making Bitcoin legal tender is very different. The IMF specifically is not happy. They do not want El Salvador to use Bitcoin. And the IMF stated that cryptocurrencies should not be granted official currency or legal tender status in order to safeguard monetary sovereignty and stability. Now here's the funny part. El Salvador does not even have their own sovereign money. They traded in the Salvadoran colon for the US dollar in 2001. And a very important clarification is that citizens in El Salvador are not forced to hold Bitcoin. There are two legal tenders. There's Bitcoin and the US dollar. And El Salvador knows in order to take back their control, they either need their own currency, which they don't have, or a currency that is not controlled by anyone, that is Bitcoin. If they're using the US dollar, and that is the only currency of the country, there's no chance for them to break free. But let's talk about El Salvador's investment. They have been investing publicly in Bitcoin since 2021. And of course, Bitcoin went all the way up to $69,000. They looked like geniuses. And then it crashed all the way to about $15,000. And El Salvador's Bitcoin experiment looked like a failure. Despite this, on November 16, 2022, President Nayib Bukele stated, "We, El Salvador, are buying 1 Bitcoin every day starting tomorrow." And Bitcoin is up over 62% since El Salvador stated this. Now, we don't know exactly if El Salvador continued to buy 1 Bitcoin every day. We also don't know exactly how much Bitcoin they own. But for the sake of this video, let's assume that El Salvador is down on their Bitcoin investment. So, all in all, was it worth it for the country? Well, this is what President Nayib Bukele had to say.
But the only country in the world where Bitcoin is legal tender is El Salvador. That gives us an advantage in the new economic system that's in the works. And we have had some benefits from it. We have increased tourism by 95%, and that's in part because of Bitcoin. There's a lot of Bitcoiners that want to go to the only country where Bitcoin is legal tender. We have Bitcoin conferences, etc. So we're getting a lot of tourism for it. We're getting a lot of private investment also because there's...
So he stated, although the price of Bitcoin is down, tourism has increased by 95%. He also mentioned that there have been some private investments in the country due to Bitcoin. And those investments may increase by multiples because Bukele announced he is going to present a bill to eliminate all income, property, and capital gain taxes on technology innovations. He tweeted, "Next week, I'll be sending a bill to Congress to eliminate all taxes, income, property, capital gains, and import tariffs on technology innovations such as software programming, coding, apps, and AI development, as well as computing and communications hardware manufacturing." Meanwhile, you have countries like the United States and several countries in Europe that are very harsh when it comes to AI, tech, and crypto, and they have very harsh tax laws. And here we have El Salvador that is being very welcoming, saying, "Hey, come here, build, we want you." And if this actually becomes a reality, you can almost be sure that a lot of investments will be made into the country of El Salvador. Both these mega prisons and Bitcoin are still an experiment. We could make the case that right now, as I make this video in 2023, it is working, but it's possible it doesn't work. If Bitcoin goes to zero, if crypto fails as a whole, then obviously their decision to make Bitcoin legal tender will be a very bad move. But as mentioned earlier, for El Salvador to break free, become a first world country, become a world superpower, they need to do things differently, very differently. And speaking of world powers, the United States, Russia, and China are currently fighting to become the #1 world superpower with the world's reserve currency. And there is a terrifying video of Vladimir Putin from Russia and Xi Jinping from China stating to each other that change not seen in 100 years is coming. And if you want to learn more, go ahead and watch this video right here.